YouTube, Joyboy here. So today I want to talk about Jinbe. And so you guys have known for the longest time that people have speculated what exactly Jinbe landed on the roulette, myself included. But I think as of the recent chapters, it's become less of a question on what exactly Jinbe landed on the roulette, and more of a question on did he actually spin the roulette at all. Some of you may not like this thought initially, but hear me out. For the longest time, I've been under the impression and given the argument that in no way would it make sense for Jinbe not to follow through with his goals and ambitions concerning the Straw Hat crew. Essentially in the lines after which we learned that he went back on his word and got cold feet. It just didn't make sense with the Jinbe that we knew. But this was, of course, with a limited understanding of the roulette and really the sacrifices that needed to be made. And I always made the clarification that if there was anyone else's life at stake, then Jinbe could legitimately potentially be thinking about other people and have backed out on the roulette. Like Jinbe, if any of the sacrifices or all the sacrifices had to do with Jinbe himself, I believe that Jinbe would have took whatever came. But if anyone else's lives was in danger whatsoever, I think Jinbe is the kind of character who would choose other people over himself. And I even believe this was emphasized through his conversation with the other fishmen at the beginning of chapter 830. During this conversation, it was emphasized that Jinbe makes all of his decisions based on those around him, and his crew was essentially telling him, Jinbe, finally, just follow your own goals. Do not worry about us, regardless of what may come. But I do think that Jinbe is still harboring doubts as to doing something so selfish, depending on the consequences it could have on his subordinates. And I think at this point in the story, Jinbe was rather hopeful that no matter what would happen, the anger of the Big Mom pirates would be mostly directed towards him. He would be leaving the crew, not the rest of the pirates, and so with this being established, then perhaps he could leave, take whatever punishment may come, and his subordinates would get off scot-free. But as of the recent chapters of One Piece, this is looking incredibly unlikely because we've gotten a greater understanding of the roulette, and specifically the numbers on the roulette. When I initially talked about this, I thought that the numbers were either going to be money and or lifespan. And so the idea of the money was really only a valid thought because there was the number 1,000 on the roulette. And I thought to myself, there is no way Big Mom is literally taking 1,000 years of life from whoever spins the roulette. That's just straight overkill. So perhaps this doesn't mean lifespan, perhaps this means money. But we know for a fact now that it does mean lifespan. And when 1,000 years comes up, it's not about taking 1,000 years specifically from the person who spins the roulette or the person that she wants to punish. It's from him and his entire crew. At the very least, this is what happened to Pedro and his crew. Pedro spun the roulette, or actually Peckham spun the roulette for Pedro and landed on 100 years, and they ended up taking 30 years from one of Pedro's subordinates, and then 60 years from Pedro himself. Actually, I think it was rounded down to 50 after he took out his eyeball. But anyway, guys, with this being the clear role of the numbers in the roulette, and if we assume that Jinbe spun the roulette and the numbers would play the same role as they did in Pedro's scenario, then we must really be asking the question, if Jinbe was aware that if he got a number such as 1,000 or 100, and Big Mom would potentially take the remaining lifespan from those members of his crew which have nothing to do with what Jinbe is doing, would he actually choose to potentially sacrifice them? And I honestly don't think that he would. Or if he did do this, I believe that he would have 100% not been aware of the potential consequences. But now thinking from this perspective, when we see later on that Jinbe backed out of spinning out the roulette, this now makes a whole lot more sense to me. Given the confirmation that somebody else's life is at stake other than Jinbe's, 100% confirmed in my opinion, or very close to that, then I think that it now makes sense that Jinbe actually did back out of the roulette. He did not spin the roulette. And with this being the case, then a lot of people are speculating, what did Jinbe lose? Did Jinbe lose his leg in the last chapter of One Piece? Oda specifically did not show his left leg. Does this in a way imply that Jinbe is missing that leg? No, I don't think so. First of all, I think that Oda knows what us readers expect. He knows that the general thought is that Jinbe might have lost an arm or a leg. And he's basically playing that over our heads right now. Basically like, oh, did Jinbe lose a leg or not? You don't know. I'm just going to hide this leg. But in reality, I really, at this point in time, do not believe Jinbe actually spun the roulette and thus lost nothing. And so you guys know that I have supported a theory in which Jinbe potentially lost his reputation. And so the only way that I can really see this being reasonable is if Jinbe in some way got a dumbed down version of the roulette. Basically, a guarantee from Big Mom that the roulette that he was spinning, all the lifespan totals, would be directly in relation to Jinbe himself. And then in this case, then I believe that Jinbe would choose to spin the roulette rather than not. But based on what we know about Big Mom right now, I'm highly skeptical that she would do such a thing. I do not think that she wants to make it easy for Jinbe to leave her crew, and thus adding on this potential sacrifice, like how badly do you actually want to do this, I believe would be something Big Mom would actually do. So if you want to leave my crew, then at the potential sacrifice of your entire, the entire Fishman pirates, then by all means, Jinbe, go give it a spin. All the while knowing Jinbe well enough to know that he would, at least doing something like that, would be the absolute hardest decision Jinbe had ever made in his entire life. And this honestly really ties well with my general perception of Big Mom's sort of role in the story. Big Mom is a true pirate. She lives by the true pirate code, and she doesn't sugarcoat it or anything like that. And so, to be a true pirate, given some of the vague definitions that we've gotten from the story of One Piece from people like Dr. Luke, essentially is something like having unwavering conviction and dedication. And Big Mom certainly fills this role. She's willing to do anything at the price of anyone in order to get what she desires. And so this is pretty much what a true pirate should be like. And so in order for Jinbe to sort of match that level, he would have to do the same. But due to his connections with his subordinates, he's not able to reach that sort of level. And thus is sort of the sort of test that I see with the roulette. And so many of you might be thinking, well, Joyboy, what's the point? What's the point of having this roulette and have Jinbe backing out of the roulette? Like, that would seem to serve no purpose in the story, and thus why perhaps many of you may have ruled it out as a possibility. But I do want to say this, which is there is a general theme with Whole Cake Island, which is that Oda has really been setting up the complete lack of hope, as well as the Straw Hats and their allies' inability to sort of do what it is that they came to do. Sanji came to Whole Cake Island with the intent of sort of breaking the marriage, but due to the threats that Big Mom and the Vinsmokes made, found himself sort of subjugated by them because of this. The same thing applies to Luffy. Luffy came in there with the idea that he would beat everyone up, found himself fighting against a Yonko, and he also failed. And then we have Jinbe as well, who had this goal of leaving the Big Mom pirates and perhaps also failed as well. And was not willing to pay the sacrifice that it took in order to gain his freedom. And so I think thematically all these things fit together. Jinbe's situation would be really not that different from Sanji's situation, which we've already been dealing with throughout the entirety of the story. And at some point in time, Oda will need to flip the script, which apparently he's done in the last chapter because Jinbe has actually decided to go against Big Mom. And so obviously if he did something like this, then he would have to assume that there would be consequences for his actions. But all of this, I believe, would in general set up the same thing for all the characters, which is that in order to take on a Yonko, sacrifices must be made, or at least risks must be taken. Everyone must get stronger, either physically or mentally or both. And so this leads into the last part of this theory, and I want to give a shout out to SSJ22 Terrace, who in a way helped inspire this idea. He posted his own general thoughts on Twitter. I read through it. It was very interesting and really was going to be very similar to what I'm going to be saying here. But I think that in order for Jinbe to make a decision such as this, regardless of what happened with the roulette, he must know at this point in time that he's going directly against a Yonko's wishes, and thus there will be consequences for such actions, possibly including the lives of everyone that he loves in his crew, or from his family and friends back in Fishman Island. And so why exactly would Jinbe make a decision like this? Well, my understanding of Jinbe is that he's a very rational guy. He makes, for the most part, very prudent and well thought out decisions. And so I think that in order for him to make a decision such as this, he would need a plan. Or if he doesn't have a plan, he would need something to, in a way, appease Big Mom, in my opinion. And I think that there is something that's really Jinbe could have, which could be his, in a way, trump card in order to sort of get away with whatever he's doing that may be against Big Mom's orders. And what this is a very popular theory which I've been supporting for a long time and still highly believe, which is the idea that Jinbe saved Peckham's after he got shot by Capone and fell into the ocean. I'm just going to be 100% straight up with you guys. Based on my understanding of One Piece, Peckham's did not die. And if he did die, it would be, for me, literally one of the most shocking moments in the story of One Piece for a character to literally go out like that with really no fanfare or any sort of just like big incidents or any sort of emotional reaction whatsoever, for like Oda to just kill Peckham's off like that and then he's just gone for the rest of the story. Oh yeah, Peckham's died, would feel very un-One Piece like. And so because of that, then we must assume that Peckham's was saved. And so he fell into the ocean, right? And so anyone who could possibly be in the ocean to save Peckham's? Well, there's really only one good guess, and that would be the fishermen pirates and Jinbe. We saw spotted sharks in the waters. We know that the fishermen have some control over, in general, like the fish and the creatures of the ocean. So this would just make a ton of sense. There's another idea potentially that maybe there's a homie in the water. We've seen like the transponder snails that live in the water. Maybe Big Mom became aware of that. But anyway, guys, long story short, that idea feels like a stretch. The idea that the fishermen pirates saved Peckham's does not feel like a stretch. It feels like something that makes a ton of sense. And so with this being established, then they saved Peckham's. And if they saved Peckham's, there's clear implications through Capone and Peckham's interaction that Capone sort of let Peckham's in on his plan in a way. Basically gave him a way out of being shot. Like, bro, you didn't have to get shot right now. Like, all you needed to do was join me and we would have been all good. And Peckham's basically did not choose to go that route. But then Peckham's would know at least somewhat of Capone's plans. And so if they saved, if the fishermen pirates saved Peckham's, then they would also know some details as to Capone's plans. And thus, Jinbe would know that. And here you would have at least somewhat of an explanation for why Jinbe might be potentially risking the lives of his crew right now by going against a Yonko. He has a good reason. He's doing this out of the quote-unquote goodness of his heart. It's also what he wants to do, but at the same time, he can justify it by saying to Big Mom, hey, I'm trying to help you out right now. I know that I'm not supposed to be in the castle right now, but I'm trying to prevent you from potentially, having someone do something that might, in a way, harm you. But this would, of course, all depend on Capone's plans, which we do not know at this point in time. A lot of people are skeptical Capone really has any plan whatsoever that could really do anything to a Yonko. But I think at this point we have to assume that Capone's plan is at least somewhat legitimate and has some chance of succeeding in some way through some incomprehensible sort of Oda imagination. So we'll just have to see there. But anyway, guys, the reveal is almost finally upon us. Jinbe is finally back in the story, and I think that we can expect an answer to all of these riddles, at least in the next 2 to 3 chapters, 1 to 3 chapters. I don't think it'll be next chapter if it's anything important whatsoever, just because Oda likes to blue ball us like that. But I do think that in the next couple chapters we will have answers, and finally we can put to rest all of the speculation. But we'll just have to wait. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree or disagree and why. Let me know if you have anything that contradicts anything that I said or anything that supports it that I may not have mentioned. Just share your thoughts. Like the video if you like the video. Dislike the video if you dislike the video. Subscribe if you want to be notified for my future videos. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.